All right, let's get into it. When we think of ancient philosophers, we usually picture these calm dudes in togas, just kind of pondering deep thoughts. But the guy we're talking about today, he was different. He was a revolutionary. He took one look at his entire world, the gods, the heroes, the values, the whole shebang, and decided somebody needed to blow the whistle. This is the story of Xenophanes.
Just take a second and let that quote sink in. This one sentence from over 2,500 years ago is like a bomb dropped right into the heart of ancient religion. I mean, it's a direct, no-holds-barred challenge to everything people held sacred, and it perfectly sets the stage for the kind of thinker we're dealing with here.
So who on earth would have the guts to say something like this back in 500 BC? Well, he wasn't a king. He wasn't some powerful priest. Nope. He was a refugee, a wandering poet who'd been kicked out of his home. He spent his entire life as an outsider looking in, and that, right there, is what gave him the perspective to see what everyone else was just too close to notice.
To really get Xenophanes, you have to get his life story. Seriously, it's not just some background detail, it's the engine of his entire philosophy. His whole way of looking at the world was basically forged in the fire of being an exile. Okay, so picture this. He starts out life in a place called Colophon, a pretty wealthy city, living a life of luxury. But then, when he's about 25, the Persians invade. His comfortable life? Poof. Gone. He's forced to flee, and he ends up spending decades on the road, wandering all over the Greek world, never really having a place to call home again.
67 years! Just think about that. For nearly 7 decades, he was a man without a country, moving from city to city, culture to culture, and along the way, he observed. He saw different customs, different people, and, this is the important part, different gods. He was basically collecting this incredible database on what humans believe and want.
And the very first target he aimed that whistle at was, you guessed it, the gods themselves. He looked up at Mount Olympus, at the gods from Homer's epic poems, these super powerful beings who were also petty, jealous, and acted a lot like us. And he didn't see divinity. He saw a reflection of human arrogance.
And this is where he gets so brilliant. He starts comparing notes. He points out that the Ethiopians' gods just happen to look like Ethiopians, snub-nosed and black. And the Thracians, well, their gods were blue-eyed and red-haired. He saw the pattern clear as day. It wasn't that God created us in his image, it was that we were creating our gods in our image. He was basically inventing the sociology of religion right then and there.
But here's the thing. He didn't just tear down the old ideas. He built something totally new and radical in their place. He put forward the idea of a single, universal God. And this God wasn't a character in a story. It wasn't a person. It was an abstract, cosmic principle. A being with no human form that doesn't move or change, but shakes all things by the thought of his mind. I mean, the leap from petty, human-like gods to this perfect metaphysical mind, it was absolutely seismic. It paved the way for a whole new, more philosophical way of thinking about the divine.
So, after he's done taking on the heavens, Xenophanes turns that same critical eye back down to earth, to human society. He figured, hey, if we're this wrong about the gods, what else are we getting wrong? And as it turns out, quite a lot.
Now, to get his next point, you have to understand that athletes in ancient Greece weren't just sports stars. They were basically demigods. The winners of the big games, especially in brutal events like Pancration, which is basically a no-rules fight, were treated like heroes. They got free meals for life, tons of money, endless glory. Society saw them as the absolute peak of human excellence.
And into this hero-worshipping culture steps Xenophanes, and he just flat out says it, "My wisdom is better than the strength of men and horses." In a world that was obsessed with physical power, with the perfect body, this was an act of total rebellion. He was telling everyone their priorities were completely backward.
And his argument was just pure, simple logic. He's basically saying, okay, that's great, you want a wrestling match, but what does that do for our city? Does it help us write better laws? Does it make sure our food stores are full? The answer, of course, was no. Wisdom, he argued, is what actually improves the society. People were celebrating the wrong kind of strength.
Okay, this next part is where, for me, Xenophanes goes from being a great philosopher to something truly incredible. He wasn't just a guy with great arguments. He was a kind of proto-scientist. He went out looking for physical proof for his ideas, evidence he could hold in his hand, right from the earth itself.
So, remember all that wandering he did? Well, he kept his eyes open, and he found things. He found fossils of fish and seaweed way up in the mountains. He saw the impressions of sea creatures in rock quarries miles from any ocean.
Now, most people would just say, weird, or blame it on the gods. But Xenophanes made this amazing logical jump. This land, this mountain, must have once been underwater. And based on this evidence, he came up with this incredible theory about Earth's history, a great cycle where the world gets flooded, turns to mud, and all land life is wiped out. Then, slowly, the land dries out, and life starts all over again. He was reading the history of our planet, not from sacred myths, but from the rocks themselves.
And this scientific mindset ties directly into his biggest philosophical legacy, skepticism. Xenophanes was one of the very first to say, look, we humans can never have absolute 100% certainty. Even if you somehow manage to speak the perfect capital T truth, you wouldn't know for sure that it was the truth. All we have are our beliefs, and the best we can do is to constantly question them and try to find better ones.
So, why are we still talking about this wandering poet after 2,500 years? Why does he matter? Because that whistle he blew, it's still echoing today. The way he taught us to think, to question, to look for evidence, it laid the foundation for pretty much all of Western philosophy and science.
I mean, you can draw a straight line from his ideas to some of the biggest breakthroughs in human thought. His whole method of questioning authority and popular opinion, that's the seed of the Socratic method. His idea of one single unchanging reality, that's the core of the Eleatic school of philosophy. And his beautiful phrase, by seeking, men find out better in time, that's the soul of the scientific method, right there.
Which brings us, in a very weird way, right back to today. Because that central warning Xenophanes gave us, about making gods in our own image, about confusing a reflection for the real thing, that exact same challenge is happening right now, but with artificial intelligence.
You know, Xenophanes would look at our obsession with creating human-like AI, and he'd ask us this one simple question. We're trying so hard to build machines that talk like us, that reason like us. In the process, we risk falling into the exact same trap as the ancient Greeks. We're so focused on an intelligence that mirrors our own that we might not even recognize a truly new, alien kind of mind if one appeared. His 2,500-year-old question is still hanging in the air. Are we searching for a new kind of mind, or are we just getting better at building mirrors?